BBC World News, your daily briefing on business and economics from the world's financial centres. From New Broadcasting House in London, World Business Report.
Hello and welcome to a special year-end edition of World Business Report from Delhi. I'm Divina Gupta. Coming up on the program. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi remains popular with voters, but can he deliver on growth and jobs? 3 years on from the launch of Modi's flagship policy, Make in India, we take stock of whether India has become the global manufacturing hub it was vying to be.
I don't know if the policies would even work. There's no thought given to them.
And find out what the Aam Aadmi or the common man thinks about the ruling party's economic record. We begin with Gujarat, a state in Western India. Before he became Prime Minister, Narendra Modi was Chief Minister there and credited with turning around the state's economy. But 3 years later, after he took over the country, businesses both in Gujarat and across India are struggling, and that's causing growth to slow. Mr. Modi's party recently won state elections in Gujarat, giving his party a big boost ahead of national elections in 2019. But what will get grassroots companies growing again? Sameer Hashmi travelled to Gujarat to find out.
A rapturous welcome for Narendra Modi in his home state of Gujarat. India's Prime Minister is widely popular in many parts of the country. But India's economic growth has slowed, putting Mr. Modi on the defensive. And that's why he's been using events like this to talk about his achievements.
In 2014, Mr. Modi led the BJP to a landslide victory and became the Prime Minister. Reviving the economy was one of the main promises of his election campaign. 3.5 years down the line, he has achieved some success, but there are still a few big economic challenges.
Some of the big positives for the economy in 2017 included a sharp improvement in its ranking on the Ease of Doing Business Index. India's credit rating got upgraded by Moody's, and the government announced a $32 billion bailout plan to clean up the banks suffering due to bad debt. But there are still huge challenges like private investment in the economy, which continues to remain sluggish. Manufacturing growth is weak due to lower demand, and exports have been subdued for the last few years. But perhaps the biggest economic concern is overemployment. In Surat, the textile hub of India, many small factories like this have shut down. The rollout of the new goods and services tax and a ban on almost 90% of cash in circulation has severely impacted revenues of businesses across the board. With production falling, thousands of people lost their jobs. One of them was Ayodhya Prasad, who had been working in the textile industry for the last 20 years.
I hardly get any work now, which means I am not able to send money to my family back home. The roof of my house collapsed due to heavy rains, but I don't have enough money to get it repaired.
But experts reckon that the economic situation is starting to improve.
We do see growth picking up from here. Some of the shocks from demonetization and GST will naturally fade, and that drag goes away. And the second is, the hope is, given the strong global economy, that India's exports next year start doing better.
The IMF believes that the Indian economy has the potential to touch 8% growth over the next few years. But to achieve that, India will have to not only mend the wounds that the economy suffered in the last year, but also continue on the path of reform in the year ahead. Sameer Hashmi, BBC News, Gujarat.
So jobs are a big challenge for the Indian government. More than 12 million Indians will be entering the labour market and looking for jobs every year until 2030. And that's in addition to the 26 million Indians who are already looking for regular work. Existing jobs in some industries are declining, and India is set to see a 30 to 40% reduction in the number of jobs in the manufacturing sector compared to last year. Industries that are traditionally job creators like farming, IT and telecom have also seen massive job losses in the past year, an estimated 90 million between October 2016 and 2017. Now, Arvind Virmani was previously Chief Economic Advisor with the Indian government and Executive Director at the IMF. He joins me here in the Delhi studio. In your view, jobs are one challenge that's seen in the year gone by. What are the other economic challenges that we've seen in the Indian economy?
In 2017 itself, of course, there were certain shocks which are internal, which was demonetization and GST. But if you look at it from a longer perspective, then you have to keep in mind the double drought which happened in India, which happens only once in 12 to 13 years.
What should the government do to ensure economic growth?
I think the most important is this agricultural reform, the land reform and the labor reform. What we have to do for the longer term is the structural changes, and that is where the entrepreneurship, the Skill India, both these programs are very, very important.
All right, thank you, Mr. Virmani, for joining us. Always a pleasure speaking with you. Now, manufacturing is largely seen as India's ticket to recovery. As soon as Narendra Modi swept to power in 2014, he launched an initiative to attract foreign investment and make India a global manufacturing hub. So has that happened?
India as a country is very unique because not only we have the second biggest population of smartphone users, but the rate at which smartphone users are growing is one of the fastest in the world. We got all the necessary approval from both the central and state government at a very, very fast pace. So what we thought will take 2 years ended up being just about 6 months. The biggest challenge that we have faced is how do we convince majority of our partners to come and have a local manufacturing unit here. So if you already know which are the components where we'll get text manufactured 1 year from now, we can accordingly try and convince those set of component suppliers.
So some optimism from a foreign company about doing business in India. But what does the common man, or Aam Aadmi as they're known, think? On Twitter, @Assamboy says our respected economic performance is not very solid and encouraging. No big ticket investments are coming up at all. And that's one of the main criticisms of the goods and services tax. Big companies are able to cope with the changes, but smaller ones are struggling to adapt to the new tax structure and the online system.
I don't know if the policies would even work. There's no thought given to them. So how can they be implemented? You talk about demonetization. Was there a thought given to it? One fine day I wake up and say, this currency is no longer valid.
But some people are optimistic about the future.
It's very good. I like it because lots of black money is coming out and it's helping lots of people. I know it will take some time to be improved.
Well, 2018 promises to be a year of more populist economic policies. We'll see a proof of that on February, where India's budget will be announced by the Finance Minister, Arun Jaitley. Well, that's all for this special edition of World Business Report from Delhi. Thank you for joining us. Goodbye.